What's good, Cowboys Nation? Welcome into episode 7, I believe, 7 of the Sky into I show. It's your boy Skywalker still, of course, here with Aisha Morrison, aka 2I, aka my twin.
Twin.
What's good? Oh, hold on. AKA Ironheart. That's what I really wanted to call you. That's what I really wanted to call you, but I ain't really. Episode 4 kind of got me a little peeved, so I don't know if I want to call you Ironheart. You more Shuri than me, but I don't know, man. You've been watching that, right?
Yes, I have, and
Okay.
I watched the last 3 episodes yesterday, and I was shook. So I think you
Mm,
should keep watching. There are some things that make you question what the heck is going
listen,
on. But yeah, Riri is
she's
one of my
something.
favorite characters that Marvel has ever introduced. I think because of her relatability and just like her plight as a person is very relatable. So for me, I've been enjoying it. I hate all the hate that it's been getting,
Ugh,
but we I mean, the Rotten Tomatoes score has gone up
it did.
dramatically, so I think that people are still supporting it regardless.
Well, coming up on today's episode, we got some Cowboys talk for you guys. We're going to specifically dive into what this offensive line is doing in the offseason, right? How
Mhm.
this O-line staff is trying to keep things steady, no misunderstandings. We'll talk
Mhm.
about Duke Manyweather's impact on this group that he's having and has had in the past. Plus, we'll talk about running, but not the running backs. You know, a lot of talk has been about the running backs this offseason, but we're actually going to talk about a different version of running here with the Cowboys, ladies and gentlemen. So we appreciate y'all for joining us in this dead period as we kind of churn out this content. It's been a good dead period, I think, for content wise, because Cowboys community, we're spoiled with so much great content. So we're just trying to keep that thing going here too.
Yeah, I mean, dead period, if it's dead, it's like it's bittersweet for content creators because you kinda want it dead. You kinda don't want a whole bunch of news during this time.
Fair.
Um, and I will say I feel like that's something that's improved over the years with the Cowboys because I feel like, what, 6, 7 years ago, we was holding our breath every off
Yeah.
season for something bad to happen, but things have been kinda smooth sailing. I think obviously, and we're gonna talk about it here, you got the quarterback, different position group guys, they continue to go out and do work and stay busy so they don't get into no trouble or anything like that. So I think that that's, like, kinda where it started is that
Yeah.
guys are going and getting work in the off season and stuff like that, and that keeps them from being at the house and eating Doritos and putting their feet up and and
S-
not
s-
doing nothing.
Speaking of which, you have this Cowboys offensive line group working together in the offseason with
Mhm.
the offensive line guru that is Duke Manyweather. And let me give a shout out real quick. I want to make sure I get his name correct here. CBS writer Garrett Podell
Mhm.
put out a fantastic article detailing what Duke has meant to not just the Cowboys, but also the league. It got
Yeah.
guys coming over and working with Duke. But the Cowboys have had a cheat code with Duke Manyweather being across the street here in Dallas and really for the better part of a decade. And
Mhm.
this article, detailed his impact individually and just in general with this Cowboys offensive line. There are a couple quotes I want to dive into and rap to you guys about here. And one of the ones that stuck out to me right away is when Duke said, and I want to make sure I get this right here. He said, for many of these guys, I've been the beacon of stability for a lot of these guys for their career, including Zach Martin.
Mm.
And that is something I really didn't think about because now I think about so many different offensive line coaches, right? They're on their third offensive line coach in 4 years.
Yeah.
But the fact that Duke has been around, he's really been the most stable aspect to these guys, the veterans and young bucks. And that hit me and I thought it was profound.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's important, and when you say cheat code, that's exactly what Duke is. I mean, to have him in your backyard, basically at your disposal for teaching, is something that a lot of teams in the league don't have. I mean, I work for another network and talk about the other team here in Texas, and they are experiencing turnover, turnover, turnover with their offensive line, even though they have drafted offensive line very early, and giving up picks and all this stuff. And they are still in a place to where there's so much uncertainty about the offensive line. I think this also ties back into, um, this is a issue through the NFL right now with offensive line. And this is number one, partially it's because of the NFLPA and the safety protocols and those things. And those are not things we discount. Obviously, there's reason for it. But with that, offensive line, from my understanding, has been one of the position groups that has gotten hit the hardest with limitations in practice, with limitations at OTAs and all of these things. These guys are not able to get the amount of work as a unit that I think people maybe think that they get. So it it is up to them to go out in the off season and stuff to practice and to perfect their technique and doing. And I talked to a scout when I was at the Senior Bowl, and this is a product of, a lot of these guys aren't necessarily coming in NFL ready anymore. This is also a product of the spread offense and the way that college football plays offense now. And it really it really puts the offensive lineman in a place to where their athleticism and footwork is really the focusing part, and not some of the interior pin pull, all that stuff part of the game. And now we're seeing, and again, I've had scouts talk to me about it, is that there is a big development divide with a lot of these guys when they come in. It takes several years sometimes for these guys to get acclimated to what playing offensive line in the league looks like and what schematically you're being asked to do, as opposed to what most of these guys are being asked to do in college. So again, circling back to the original point, the fact that Duke is here to bridge, like you were just talking about, is a luxury. And it's
Hmm.
a luxury that, you know, even though he has his camps and stuff like that, he down the street for the Cowboys. And that's it's awesome. And when you talk about him being a stable factor, again, offensive line is one of those position groups that is built on cohesiveness, and it's built on the foundation of things being stable. And like you were just saying, this team has had several different coaches, several different ideologies,
Hmm.
several different schemes, and all this stuff. And for him to kind of be the guy that grounds them and still says, it don't matter what the hell they got you doing. This is the technique that you need to always have. This is fundamentally the way that you need to play this game, is a benefit. And I don't take Duke for granted being here, and I'm sure the players don't either.
Yeah, and he's had to run into some challenges with that because when you're that close to the Cowboys, you have sometimes differences philosophically, right?
Hmm.
And I remember a couple years ago with Mike Solari, he publicly, openly, via Twitter, came out and said, he was told they're doing things that a lot of these guys aren't comfortable with, right? And he
Yeah.
talked about that via Twitter to the point I think that led to Solari meeting with Duke and trying to get on the same page. Solari, when he talked about it last year, it seemed like he was begrudging, like he really didn't like the fact that this was happening because he's
Mm-hmm.
old school, and back in the day that wasn't the case. But now with Duke meeting with Connor Riley and the assistant offensive line coach, he seems fired up. He's talking about how these guys are on the same page, and that that is important because I'm not. He said, "quote I'm not trying to take your job. I just want to make sure what we're teaching and we're focusing on and harping on the skills and techniques that you're going to be using here and during the season, and not just that, but." Here's what I believe works best for the guys that I've been here. I know these dudes
I
better
know
than
them.
you.
I know them more than you.
I know
Yes.
them better than you, so this works. So
Mhm.
if we can work together and be on the same page, that's only going to help these young players and veterans.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say the quote that you just mentioned. He said, "This is Duke Manyweather." He said, "Hey, I don't want your job, but allow me to
Mhm.
continue to progress these guys as much as possible when you guys can't in some of the downtime where coaches can't work with players." Again, going back to my original point is that they have limited time. These coaches have limited time because of some of the rules and all that stuff to coach these guys, and it wasn't always like this.
Mhm.
So, with that in mind, he gives them an advantage. And again, if they are on the same page, he can be echoing what they're going to be needing to do or what they're going to be asked to do come training camp and come the season. I also I also wanted to mention the fact that, when you talk about a Solari and all that stuff, I just feel like last year specifically, there was a lot of miscommunication, uh, in philosophy and what the run game was supposed to look like and what they wanted the game to look like. But I also think the quarterback getting hurt altered a lot of what they wanted to do offensively in general, and specifically not being able to take advantage of his mobility as well.
When it comes to run game, to me, I just never thought that McCarthy had a true plan for it. I don't really think he cared for it. And then you talk about Philbin and Solari; they're not guys known for run schemes.
Yeah.
They're O line coaches just that are supposed to just coach these guys up, you know. But you wouldn't really go look at their resume and say, "Hey, they have this specific scheme that's innovative or excellent or what have you." They're very much old school. I think Philbin was very much coach 'em up guy, and Solari was very much, "Hey, I want to play power football." But his scheme wasn't anything impressive. So from a
Mhm.
scheme standpoint, I don't think it necessarily coincided with the skill set of the players. And,
Yep.
and and then when it comes to the players, they were dealing with two rookies, right up
Mhm.
front. You're dealing with a guy who, in Terrence, who was still trying to come back, and I'll get to a quote here in a second. Coming back from his injury and trying to get his confidence right. It just never, the Solari combination with this O line and this head coach just never really fit to me.
Well, and honestly, man, like this is long overdue, man. I this Cowboys run game offensive line has been in limbo for it feels like a long time now. I could be wrong. Obviously, you got some good years with Tony Pollard and Zeke at the end. Like, well, not at the end, but before, he had some of the injuries he was dealing with. But dog, like the Cowboys have not been able to run the ball consistently when they need to for years now. This has been a problem for quite some time. This is also tied into some of the red zone issues they've had. So
Playoff
I'm
issues as
hoping
well.
playoff issues as well. I mean, you can't stop the run, you can't run the ball. You're not gonna win no games.
Not in playoffs.
You ain't
Not
gonna
not
win no
multiple
games in the
games.
playoffs
Not multiple games.
because yeah, I mean, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
track it back to 2018. That was the
Mhm.
last time in the playoffs. Now they've had successful regular season run games, right? Top
Yeah.
tens type of thing. But playoff wise, they haven't had a 100-yard rusher, or not even just that. They haven't had a running back top over 77 yards since the 2018 Seattle Seahawks game.
It's insane. No, it's
That's
it's insane to think
in the
about for
playoffs,
real.
y'all.
It's insane to think about for real, and it's even more insane when you hear some of the bigger networks talking about still referring to the Dallas offensive line as this,
Oh
like,
boy.
mammoth of an offensive line, and we're sitting here in real life, like, that's not what's going on here. That's not what's been going on here for a while. Um, but when you talk about also too, I mean, another thing that stood out last year too, though, is that we saw in training camp that Rico Dowdle probably needed to be the starting running back, and that didn't happen until down the season. So it was like later in the season. So again, just tying back into what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What is happening? Like,
Well, I want to get to two quotes that he said to me that again stood out and really kind of encapsulates what happened last year. First one was Cooper Beebe.
mhm,
This one was really interesting. He said, honestly, quote, honestly, he was moved to center and he really didn't have any detailed coaching or development in season or making that transition. That is coaching malpractice. You got a rookie who hasn't played center in college like that, playing a new position, one of the most important positions on the line, one of the most difficult positions on the line, and he wasn't getting detailed coaching. He should have been worked with constantly in that because it's a totally different ask for a guard to center, right?
mhm.
And I just thought that one stood out, and I think. And he also said in there he tried as best as he could throughout the season to give him that in-season coaching, but that's not his job. That's the job of the offensive line coach and the assistant offensive line coach. That's
Mhm.
malpractice to me, too.
No, I mean, a lot of this article had me ticked off. I was sucking my teeth reading some of this stuff. I mean, but if you are watching the game, you knew that. Like, if you're watching the games, you knew that there was clearly, like I said, a lot of miscommunication in what these guys are being asked to do. And just to know that Cooper Beebe was able to have the year that he had with little to it sounds like little,
Detailed coaching.
guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, detailed coaching and guidance, especially switching positions. I think it speaks to who he is as a player and how hard of a worker he is. But it ticked me off, twin,
Mm.
because how is that even possible? I mean, again, I understand they're limited, but how is that even possible for there to not be
Nah, there's no
steady
excuse. There's no excuse in
communication?
season.
No,
And,
it's there is not.
and just
There's
imagine
not.
if BB's not getting that detailed coaching. Do you think that Tyler Guyton was?
Dog,
You know
dog,
what I mean? And he
dog.
needed it more probably than Cooper Beebe did. So, but or maybe as equally because they both were rookies, both playing different positions than they played in college. It's just that Guyton was more raw.
Well, and then also too, Guyton was a right tackle.
Yeah, different
So he's
positions. That's what
switching
I'm saying.
positions too.
Yeah,
So
they
like
both
this
played
is
different positions, but he's more raw. He might have needed it more.
but I agree. And it's like I said, I like getting these answers with this article, but I will say some of it is very frustrating to think
It's
that
damning. Yeah.
that's what was happening or was not or what was not happening with this offensive line.
And here's the other one that stood out. This was a little long winded here, but again, it's just like wow. I mean, you can't have this on the offense line. He said this was for Terrence Steele. He said, "quote Mike Solari wanted him to do different things with his hands that I didn't necessarily agree with, and that I didn't think worked for Terrence. I think late last year you saw him get back to some of the timing with his hands that worked for him.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of what's going on or what's going to be with Connor Riley this year. We're on the same page with that. So really." I saw a big difference in Terrence's movement in the spring, and I saw a big difference already this summer, how he's moving in terms of changing direction and really confident back on his knee. And
Yeah.
Terrence might be the one who suffered the most from the Solari change, starting in 2023, and then I think it continued a bit in 2024. He was already a guy that had to work hard every year to be better as a pass protector. As a run guy, he's one of the better run blocking tackles in the league, right tackles in the league. But
Mhm.
as a pass protector, it's something that he obviously has to continue to get better at. And in 23, he started off really bad with the knee.
Yeah.
I thought he improved. The film showed he improved. I thought he was one of your better offense linemen in the playoff game. If you go back and
Mhm.
watch the film, 24 off to another rocky start. That was a consistent thing with him under Solari. Rocky
Mhm.
starts, right? And then as Duke said here, you saw him improve technique wise and be more confident player. I think he is going to benefit the most from having a Connor Riley, Clayton Adams change here to
Yeah, no,
he
I
better
agree,
at
and
least he better.
yeah, I agree, and obviously, Duke mentioned how he felt like his movement and stuff got his timing with his hands rather got better towards the end of the year. You could see that. You could see that. But I also think Terrence Steele has always been a guy that he's not the most powerful, so he has to be the aggressor. And that's something he's talked about numerous times is that when he's at his best, he's the one striking first. He's the one punching first off the line. He's not a reactionary to what the defensive end is doing. And I think that that's kind of the attitude that I don't know if this is what Mike Solari wanted, but a lot of the time when these guys were running the ball, it was like they were waiting for the defense to decide what was going on as opposed to being the aggressor and putting hands and feet on people at the snap and being the person that, initiates the rep. And with Terrence Steele, I mean, you talked about thinking that he's going to benefit the most from a Clayton Adams system and stuff. Yes, this is an athletic guy. This is a guy that has the ability. He actually can actually run pretty well. He has the ability to get upfield. I am curious though on. I am curious though. Like one thing about Terrence Steele is that he's played every snap the last 2 years, y'all. He's the only offensive lineman that's played every snap on the last 2 years. So the like his longevity is something that I want to continue to have. And I hope that working with Clayton Adams and Connor Riley helps him continue further in his career because I
You
don't
know,
know. That's a lot. That's not something you hear like that. Like every snap, not
yeah,
missing a game,
I think
not
he's
saying
played the most snaps at the position in the league. It's something like that, top 3 or 5, if I remember reading correctly.
he
Yeah,
is a
the
hard
durability.
worker. Yeah, he's a hard worker. He puts a lot into his body. And I don't know, this is another part of the article that had me ticked off.
you
I
know,
was just ticked off this whole time because
as you were talking about it's so funny as you were talking about the lack of aggressiveness in the run game from their sets, basically, or not sets, but
Mhm.
from the blocking across the line. It was the
Mhm.
inverse. I think that was an issue in the pass department, at least from listening to what Duke had to say. I think Solari was asking these guys to be the aggressor and the attacker in the pass game, and that's where you saw Terrence just lungy and leany way
Yes.
too often. And he's not the type of guy that I think recovers extremely well from that.
Mhm.
And usually it's those freak of natures like a Tyler Smith that does that really well, right? And you saw that, and he talked about it. I think it was a tweet against the Eagles where Tyron Smith was caught doing this, doing some being more of an aggressor in the passing department until I think Tyron Smith, I'm sorry, said, "What am I doing? I'm a 12-time Pro Bowler, whatever it is, Hall of Famer. I know what the hell I'm doing." And you saw the difference. I broke this down in film. You saw the difference in patience, in technique from
Mm.
Tyron Smith, and Terrence still overshooting and over aggressive. And I think it was that Solari type of coaching. I wonder if he'll go back to being more patient yet strong at the punch point on that right side. And I think that'll help him because go again, y'all. I'm not just making this up. Go watch him in his two worst games, 49ers in 23 and Eagles in 23. Go watch his lack of patience and his over aggressiveness in the pass department, and go watch the Green Bay Packers game. Night and
Mm.
day. Night and
Yeah.
day. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep my eye on that one.
One of the quotes that stood out to me as well, well, one of the parts of the article that stood out was, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, is Steele's now working on getting back to a more detailed approach with his hands after former Cowboys offensive line coach Mike Solari emphasized physical traits over technique
Mm.
when working with the Dallas right tackle. Terrence Steele's physical traits are not he's not a gonna run
He's
through
not a
your
specimen.
face, dominate you physically. He's not that. He is more of a finesse player. And he's very smart. And I don't think that you're asking him to be something that he's not. Now, one thing I will say about Terrence Steele is he's one of those guys that I do feel like the run game helps him with speedier edge rushers and things like that. Because if you're running at these guys and as he wears those guys down in the run game because of his attitude, you know how he is. He finishes plays. That makes to me that tires out those DNs when it is pass rush time and stuff like that. He's one of those guys. You know how people talk about Dak has to kind of get going and feel the game. I think Terrence Steele is the same way, and the run game helps build his confidence,
It's a great point.
and it helps. Yes, and I think it helps build um that competitiveness in him in game. And so I'm just I'm more than anything, I want coaches that have the wherewithal to say, now some stuff they're going to ask you to do because you just got to do. But I want coaches to be able to say, you can't get to the other side of the formation fast enough. So maybe that ain't something we're going to have you doing that much. Maybe we'll pull from the guards instead of the tackles.
Are you just talking
Like
about
if
in general, or are you talking about with
yeah,
Terrence?
yeah, no, I'm saying in you know what I'm saying in general.
Okay.
I want a coach that can look at the different guys on your offensive line, figure out what they do well in particular, and work around that. Yeah, you might sprinkle in, the
Oh, you
tackle
got that.
coming around the formation sometimes or whatever. But if those guys can't get there, okay, fine, pull from your guard spot. That's fine. But like don't ask them to keep doing the stuff that they're not accustomed to doing because again, that's when penalties come in. That's when stalled drives in the freaking end zone or the red zone comes in. And I'm also looking for this offensive line to take a step when it comes to penalties and things like that. And I think them being one of the more penalized teams in the NFL, specifically from the offensive line spot, has a lot to do with this as well. I would think.
Hey, let her cook. Okay.
Oh.
Gotta let that breathe a little bit. Gotta let that breathe a little bit. Let's put a pin in that, chat, because
Mhm.
we're going to talk about why I think they have exactly that type of coach slash coaches
Yeah.
that will help in that department. But great segue here as you talk about the run game with Terrence Steele and just in general with this offensive line. I do
Mhm.
think the run blocking improving is going to be key. I do think protection is obviously going to be key. However, there are going to be times where QB1 is going to
Mm.
have to make something shake because maybe pass protection broke down, or you have to play above the rim or the 2-3 as they talk about, and he has to
Mm,
use his legs. And
mhm,
that's been a hot button topic, I think, over the last 3 seasons here in Dallas, where Dak Prescott using his legs. Allow me to kind of let's revisit the timeline of this
mm,
whole conversation. Okay, you guys remember? Let's go back to 2023. We started off very rocky. That offense was really weird, and Dak really wasn't scrambling a whole lot. So the conversation got brought up right around the bye week, ironically. And right out the bye week, you heard them talk about playing above the 2.3 and getting out. If the initial routes aren't there, Dak stepping up, moving out, and not necessarily running, but scrambling. And boom, what happens? He starts making more plays with his legs that we kind of saw in the past. And then 2024 gets here, and it seemed to go right back, if not worse, than what it was prior to the bye week in 2023. He was on pace for career lows in rush yards, scramble attempts. And look, I'm not acting like Dak has been a quarterback that's going to rush the ball 100 times a year, but it's an important part of his game to at least be mobile. And we
mhm.
saw that mobility take a hit last year until they brought it up before Atlanta. Hey Dak, you don't have more rushing yards than Peyton Manning in 2015, right?
Clarence.
Clarence, and so Dak, like, yeah, goes out in Atlanta, runs for 22 yards and tears the hammy off the ball. All right, and now we're in a new regime, and there are similar questions coming out about, hey, is Dak going to use his legs? And you brought up Clarence. Shouts out to Chill DLS podcast. He talked about
Mhm,
how he spoke with Dak, and that he said that Dak is working on his speed and he's working on his running. And you
mhm.
hit me up and you like, hey, twin, I think this is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. It is a big deal because when you look at it's so interesting. It's funny how times change. It's funny how having a mobile quarterback is almost the utmost desire. And I think that goes back into, don't get me started, that goes back into the offensive line play in the NFL, but we're not gonna go there. Um, Mobile quarterback is something that most teams prefer right now. We
Yeah.
have seen a change in this league from if you're a pocket passer, like how many times last year when we were studying, you would look if you look and saw a guy was a statue, you was like, oh, he's cooked.
I mean,
He's
it is
cooked.
an advantage. It helps the defense for sure if you don't have some form of mobility.
I don't even know, like, again, I don't even know if you can say that it's an advantage. It is normalized. When you look at most
I'm
of the
sorry. I mean, an
quarterbacks, even
advantage for the defense.
oh, no, yeah,
My
I
bad.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure. It is. It's an advantage for the defense to have a guy that can't move around anymore. And when you look at some of the best teams in the league, they have guys that can move around. And that it's not just for decoration. It really stresses a defense when you have a guy. It's backbreaking, dog.
Yeah.
It is like when you think that you have a third and long sewed up, and you got a guy that escapes through the A gap and gets those yards
I mean,
for
we've
a
seen it.
defense. And yeah, we've seen it, we've experienced it, and we've seen him do it.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
And we've seen him do it. And here's my thing about the mobility thing. I'm gonna say this, and I don't really care how it makes anybody feel. I believe that Dak's injury that he suffered has been minimized in this league. I
mm,
think that we have not talked about the severity of that injury and what that could really mentally do to a quarterback.
sure.
Y- The man saw his ankle pointing in the opposite direction.
His ankle was throwing up gang signs, y'all.
And the expectation is for him to come back out and want to run the ball again. And don't get it twisted. I believe that Dak has to run the ball to some capacity. I think his mobility is what has made him the
Absolutely.
quarterback that he is. His ability to improvise, his ability to manipulate the pocket. That is what killed. And I remember his early in his career, rolling to his left is crazy. There's some quarterbacks that still can't do it. Rolling to his left, throwing dimes, and that was very early. And his ability to improvise, to me, is what bridges some of the talent gap and the arm talent and all that stuff that people talk about. Some of the other really good quarterbacks in this league. I'm not saying he is a burner. He's never been that.
He
He's not
doesn't
one of
need to
those
be a
guys.
runner. He needs to be
He
mobile.
doesn't. No, yeah, he just needs to be able to, when he sees grass, to go get it, and to be able um to extend plays when you need him to extend plays. And I think that that's something that he's always done pretty well. So when you take that part of his game away and he's just a I'm telling you, man, pocket passers in this league right now are, there may be a couple that you like, okay, he can get it, but most of the really
There's not
good
many.
ones, exactly. That's not this game anymore. Offensive line play, but also, but also the amount of multiplicity and flexibility you have with a mobile quarterback, it just completely shifts your offense and what you're able to do. And here's my last thing. Why does like him running in this conversation have to be said? That's the part that's like that bothered me the most. Again, definitely considering
Can you expound on what you mean?
what I mean by that. Oh, when I say why does it need to be said,
Yeah.
why does the media have to say it for it to be something that is coming up? Why is it why do we have to kind of fight for that in conversation last year when this is something that your quarterback
That's 2
typically
years.
does well? This is something
It's
he does well.
That's a fascinating question, and if I had to guess, I think it's due to a couple of things. Number one, his injury. You
Yeah, of
said
course.
it. We can't minimize how drastic that injury was, and I
It
do think
was.
it has affected him running or more, right? And it took him a few years to probably be more
Mhm.
comfortable in doing so. So I think the media is like, hey, how come you're not doing X, Y, Z? And then there's the scheme of things. He
Yes.
pretty much came out and said, our passing game doesn't call for me to do that. Like he came out and said, it's not a scheme where after the 2-3 they want me taking off running around or what have you. And he's not a guy that is a Lamar Jackson, that is a Kyler Murray, that is a Josh Allen where that's second nature to him. It's not second nature anymore to Dak Prescott.
Not anymore.
It might have been
Not any
second nature to him as a rookie, as a second year pro. Not anymore. He's developed into a prolific passer that his weapon is actually his mind and his arm. But what makes you a true X factor in the weapon, for Dak at least, was that ability to have mobility. And I don't think the numbers will back this up here in a second. I don't think we're that far removed from it possibly being the thing again. And again, you guys stick around. There's some numbers I want to dive into. But I want to talk about how his mobility will be used in this regime. And I bring that up because Clayton Adams was asked about this and it kind of got swept under the rug, right? Early on. And it was, again, Clarence Hill. Appreciate you, Clarence, for giving us some content. Clarence had asked Clayton Adams about the mobility of the quarterback and if it's needed to make his run game go. And because they were talking about Kyler Murray. Before I play this audio for you guys, I kind of want to talk about why I think it's cool to have Clayton Adams here.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, I want a guy that can look at the offensive line and say, you can't pull great, or you can't get to the second level great. Let me lean into your strengths.
Yeah.
He literally said that on one of their shows where he's like, hey, man, I got to Arizona and we tried to run this wide zone that we did in Indianapolis. And I was like, wait, James Conner, that's not his game. I got a center and a guard that's not their game. The guard actually can pull better. The center guy actually can do this better. And he tailored it to these guys, and they went on to have one of the best run games in the league that year. So I do think you have a guy who can adapt to his backfield, who can adapt to his offensive line, but also something that Chill do if he did a little bit more homework, he doesn't need to have a mobile quarterback to have a successful run game. When he was a part and a big part of the Indianapolis Colts' success on the ground when he was a part of that offensive line, guess who their quarterbacks were to I? Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett. Anybody think them two dudes are running quarterbacks? No. So he doesn't, and Dak ain't no damn Phillip Rivers, even though he hasn't been running. He's not Phillip. Phillip is a true definition of a damn statue quarterback. Okay, Jacoby Brissett can move around a little bit more, but you're not mistaking him for a running quarterback. So he's shown me he doesn't need to have a Lamar or Kyler to have a successful run game. But yes, it does help when you do have a guy like Lamar or Kyler, obviously, because you can incorporate those dudes in the run game. Uh-oh. I think you're muted.
I did mute myself.
Let's get you back.
My bad, y'all. But we love a self-aware king.
Yeah.
We love someone that can redirect and say, like, hey man, this ain't working. Let me fix this. Let me change this. And with Clayton, I mean, I was really impressed with him. I know with you, I remember with you, your breakdown you did when the Cowboys played the Cardinals. Um, just the detail in the run game and how it's really interesting because I feel like his system is definitely relevant to today's NFL,
Oh yeah.
but it's not overly done. Does that make sense? Like it's not too flashy and too it's not I think some coaches try to be deceptive and they do the most.
Let me paint the picture.
Yeah.
His pre-snap is very much so modern.
Right.
It's very much so modern. Once that ball snap,
It's
this
just
old
running.
school football
Yeah,
running through
it's
your
just
face.
running through your face.
Yeah.
And when you look at that offensive line for the Cardinals with one first rounder on
No
it
Pro
and
Bowlers.
no Pro Bowlers and the efficiency they were able to get in that run game. This is a clipboard warrior. And that's what I wanted coming into this season. I can't remember how many times the Cowboys would go up against a team and we would be sitting here saying they got out coached.
Oh
Like
yeah.
some games are gonna be about the clipboards. It is. You need the players to go out there and do it. But this gentleman to me gives you an edge with that clipboard. And that's what I care about. And if he's listening to the players, I mean, they clearly feel like even him taking the time, even Connor Riley and those guys taking the time to make sure they're on the same page with Duke and that there's cohesiveness speaks to that tells your players, oh, you give a damn about me.
Mhm.
Oh, you give a damn about my success. You give a damn about my progression. When to me, if there was that disconnect going there, because at this point you kind of co-parenting. Let's just keep it 1,000. And if you can't, if y'all can't, if these exchanges ain't going well, if the timing and schedule is not good and all this stuff, it's gonna be a problem, and your kids gonna feel that. And I think that the players felt the disconnect between what Duke was teaching them because they trust Duke,
Yeah.
and then what Solari and those guys were teaching them. And I want this unit because it's one of the most important units in this game. This unit needs to be together. There can't be a whole bunch of differences in what's going on. So for Clayton Adams to come in here and realize that and echo that makes me feel better about what this offensive line can become.
Sure. Let me circle back to the quarterback aspect of Clayton Adams and play this audio clip because I think it's very profound in some of the things he said and how it relates to Dak Prescott. Take a listen, yo.
I think that it certainly can help you when you have the ability, because if you are reading a run, essentially you're taking a digit off the board on defense. But I think if you were to look at, what we did over the course of the past 2 years, probably 70% of it was under center stuff that was going to be handed off. But yeah, and I think anytime you have the ability back there to read with that guy, it's a bonus for you. In regards to how often you need to do it, I think that the necessity for that really shows up when you're looking at like really low, tight red zone plays, or a gotta have it game on the line type thing. And I think that most quarterbacks end up in that position at some point. If they're somewhat athletic, you got to be kind of picky and choosy about when you're doing it.
I mean, there's some things there that, again, when he first got here, we were so excited, at least I was when I was diving into it, that aspect, I ain't gonna lie, it kind of got swept under the rug. But two things that stood out to me. He talked about how the big, most of what they are going to do or what they've done in the past is run under center. He said something around 70% of the time. And I just think that meshes so well with a Brian Schottenheimer who wants to marry the run with the pass and take shot plays downfield. So I think that's really going to be great for the play action game and great for Dak because he's a really good play action quarterback. And he talked about how I love play action, right? So,
Yes.
Being able to get under center when it comes to the run game, that really has no effect on the quarterback actually running. So when Clarence asked that question, he's like, hey, man, most of what we're going to do is under center. And then the other thing, he said it's the necessity, the need to do it shows up in the red zone and got to have it moments. And that's where I want Dak Prescott to live when it comes to running.
Yeah.
And I talked about numbers that I wanted to bring up and why I think it is not impossible for him to actually be that guy. So in 2023, Dak Prescott finished 13th among quarterbacks in rush yards, 14th in scramble yards, and ninth in first downs converted with his legs. I think that is exactly where he needs to live. I don't need Dak
Right.
Prescott to be a top 5, 6, 7 rusher. I don't need him to scramble the ball at the second, third most help. We do not want that. That means your offensive line is probably terrible. But if he's finishing in the top 10 and getting first downs with his legs, that is amazing, right? Because that means he's being strategic with it. So for me, when he talks about the necessity, it's the red zone. Remember the play we saw against the Chargers in 23 on the read option? He pulled it and ran. It's the run against the Giants for the touchdown where it's not there. He sees grass. He steps up and scores a tutty from like the 15-yard line or what have you. And it's the gotta have it moments that we've seen Dak Prescott do throughout his career in big games using his legs. I do believe he'll be back to that middle of the pack as opposed to on the side of where he was on a verge of career lows across those boards. And I think it'll have to do with the offense allowing him to do it. And obviously his confidence, right? And coming back from injuries and things like that, which that is the one. It's more so a belief than as opposed to, hey, we have to see it because he is coming off of an injury. And that is something that, he even talked about how, sometimes I see it, I got to pull it and go, et cetera. Well, will you have that mentality to do it, that trust of your quad or hammy to do it? That's something we got to wait and see.
Well, I think it won't take long. I think it won't, as far as like when he does do it and getting that reassurance immediately that his body can do it. I will say, even at OTAs and some of the practices, and this is something you and I have talked about, is even if he's not just taking off, it's also the maneuver in the pocket.
Yeah.
The footwork and the ability to roll out when he needs to, when they're doing boots and waggles and stuff. That's something I got to see. And he's moving full speed at OTAs. Like Dak is he's headstrong. So he wants to, I think him emphasizing the fact that he has been working on working on his flexibility and stuff is something that he is intentionally doing, because I think he understands everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Is that in order for this offense to be successful in the way that you want it to be in this run game, he has to. The point is, Sky, and all the stuff you were talking about with necessity and stuff, the threat needs to be on tape. That's all you asking for.
If from the run game standpoint,
yes, from a run
if
game
they're
standpoint.
running read options, right?
Well, if they're running read options
I
and stuff
hate
like
it
that.
because Dak's not a read option quarterback. And so they were running so many of that, and he's never going to pull the ball and run. Nor should you want him to, unless you're down there in where? The red zone.
The red zone.
Anything outside the 20 is absolutely idiotic for them to run a read option with Dak because that's not his game. Get your ass under center.
Yeah.
Right? Like Clayton Adams said, and let him play off of the run game off of the center. Let your linemen get up on these guys. Give your running backs a runway and let your Q play off that play action. So, I'm hoping that's more so where we're at. And I'm hoping there's a happy medium with Dak where he can finish in that 12, 13, 14 range in regards to scrambles and rush yards, as opposed to, hey, man, he's going to be the 31st ranked guy. We're going to need his mobility. I don't need him to be Lamar. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at. That's exactly where I'm at. Is if they're gonna temper him situationally, obviously in the red zone and that type of stuff, maybe on some big third downs when it's necessary in game. And I think he'll have a feel for that, being one of the best quarterbacks on third down for several years, I want to say. So I think he'll have a feel for when he needs to and when he doesn't need to. My biggest thing too is that if he's not running, I still need to see, and I've gotten to see a little bit of him being able to improvise,
Yeah.
make plays on the in the scramble drill, which is something they emphasize a lot because of his ability to do that, and really be able to take advantage of when defenses collapse. So for me, I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I'm more so. I can't wait to have the opportunity to maybe touch base with him, because I remember when the Cowboys played the Chargers. I remember going up to him. This is when Kellen was there. I went up to him and I was like, Kellen running the ball out of pistol? And he was like, no, he ain't. And I was like, yes, he is. And I pulled up like my film notes and I started showing him like they ran it here, they ran it here, they ran it here. And he was laughing, but we was both laughing because that's not something we saw. They were running out of shotgun a crap ton.
Traditional shotgun.
Traditional shotgun. And so even for his excitement that I saw him get just at the idea of running out of pistol. I know that running from under center is something that I'm sure he enjoys doing. And he's always been like pretty fluid with his handoffs and stuff like that. So I'm excited that this is something that I know he wanted more of, I believe. And when I told him Kellen was doing more of it with stuff, closer to the line of scrimmage and stuff, he was shook. He was like, "Hey, no, he ain't. Yes, he is."
And the pistol is such a cheat code if you don't believe in the mobility of your cue. We saw the Atlanta Falcons do that with I think it was Kirk Cousins when we were studying up on Kirk Cousins. They talked about how the pistol he couldn't get under center because of his Achilles. So they did pistol so the running back can still have a runway to gather that head of steam. So it's so interesting that Kellen, at least at that point in time, he was able to go to the Chargers and do a little bit of different things as opposed to here where, Mike McCarthy wanted to be a little bit basic. I don't think that's going to be the case with Shoddy and Clayton Adams. I think this offensive line is going to work much better. I think the run game is going to work much better. And then I think Dak's ability to be mobile and trusting his injury in his leg will help in all of that, but not just the run game, but also the pass game and moving around. So I'm excited to see this come together here in Camp 2I as we get down and count down to camp. And in the spirit of dad jokes,
please no,
we're going to run out of here too. I can't help myself.
You're sick.
I got 3 boys, so I'm always throwing. My oldest the other day said, "Dad, with the dad jokes, chill." I'm like, nope, never. You're going to get tired of them always.
Please, Father, spare us.
he actually talks like that sometimes.
Spare us, Father.
Hey, y'all, we appreciate you coming through. Or as Big X would say, hey, we appreciate y'all for coming through. Hey, listen, I'm late on it. I should have been hip on Big X when I was down there, but I'm a little late. But I'm feeling Big X, dog. He nice with it.
I didn't know your voice would get that.
Big X. The Biggie. The largest. I fool with Big X, man. Shouts out to Big X. Shouts out to Dallas. Shouts out to Texas. For 2I, I'm Sky. This has been the Sky and 2I show. We'll see y'all next week. We out here. Peace.